Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have two very special guests, returning guests. It's Paul and Philip Collins. If you listen to my show, you've heard them. I've talked to them about a couple of their books and their work with the Decoding Culture Foundation. The books we talked about were Invoking the Beyond, the Kantian Rift, Mythologized Menaces, and the Quest for the New Man. And I did a couple of those. Those were 2021, I believe. And then we talked also about this concept of deception through disclosure, which is still ongoing, this whole UFO deception. It can't be described in any other way. But we also talked about another article. It's titled Anglo-Topian Dreams, Science Fiction in the Anglophile Milieu, 1871 to 1904. That was 2024. But they've just published a new article in the second edition of the Decoding Culture Foundation's magazine, and I'll try to bring that up. But the full title of that is Automated Autotheism, Transhumanism and the Technological Transposition of Divinity. I tried to get through all of it. I did read most of it. I tried to absorb as much as I could, but I think it's a very important topic considering the technology, the kind of we're hurtling forward in this technological age very fast, and AI and biotech are really changing everything, but they can talk more about that. So Paul and Philip, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us on, William.
Yeah, thank you, William.
Awesome. So for people, I know that you were talking with Sean McCann of Wake the Dead recently, and also, you're affiliated with the guys from PsyOp Cinema. For people who didn't hear our last shows, please go back and listen to them, guys, for listening to this one. But for people who may not have known your background, I know I've reposted shows from you from Visigoth. I think I have an old show back in the Grassy Knoll days. But maybe you can talk about your research and then what led up to this particular article, Automated Autotheism.
Oh yeah, it goes all the way back to when we started. We came out with a short book over terrorism and terrorism's ties to state sponsors, and from there we got in touch with Michael Corbin and began to work with Michael Corbin, who was the syndicated talk show host who had the show A Closer Look back in the day, and
before that, Paranet Continuum.
Yeah, before that, he had Paranet Continuum.
He had been involved with the ufology community, and then he became acquainted with some of the darker elements thereof, and began to dislodge himself from that community, and that's when we started engaging in some investigative work with him.
Yeah.
And
simultaneously we were working with Terry Melanson, who had Conspiracy Archive, which I understand somebody has restored they've
archived it.
Yeah, they've archived it on the internet, and so it's still there to be seen, although Terry's not doing it right now. And then it leads up to the after Terry and was dropped out, and Michael passed on. It brings us up to the present time where we're writing, mostly with the Decoding Culture Foundation and some for the Canadian Patriot Review as well.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I've seen you a lot, Matthew Arrett. Sorry to interrupt, but I've had Matt Arrett on my show as well. He does great work as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, he does great work. Yeah,
and you do great work for him too. That's where the Decoding Through Disclosure is posted. Sorry for people who don't know. I didn't make that.
But we broach a number of different topics. We've been leaning heavily kind of on the UFO thing here as of late, just because the recent trends that are happening there. It's there's indications that covert circles related to involved in UFO and have really accelerated their operations, and it's almost like every week there's something new coming out about a new whistleblower making some kind of wild claims regarding UFOs. So it's been in the news so much that we've leaned pretty heavy on that. But we broached a large, very wide range of topics.
Yeah, but
right.
Yeah.
And so you've done a lot of great work on the UFO. Like you said, it's really almost a blizzard of info is on this kind of agenda to have this so-called disclosure. And all these guys have curious backgrounds and curious things to say. I've done some shows other than yours, just like, wow, this is really amazing.
Yeah.
But
case in point, we're working on the fourth installment to Deception Through Disclosure.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Hopefully you'll have it done here pretty soon. And my hopes is to get on a third installment of the Alien Smokescreen series that began years ago back with Conspiracy Archive, and go into some more revelations concerning that thread, the thread of alien disinformation surrounding Area 51 and what that disinformation is probably concealing. So yeah, it's something that grows on it. It contributes to the research by the minute, by the day, it seems, just new content.
Right. You got to keep up with this kind of people trying to take the king of the hill of people's minds with this whole story. I mean, it's incredible. The resources they must be applying to this UFO stories must be off the charts. I don't know where they're getting their money, but these guys all seem to be staying employed. Elizondo and all these other characters are still around. It's really something else. But I think it kind of it ties over with your work into transhumanism and this kind of
absolutely does. For instance, if you read any of the literature of the Raelian movement, one of the largest UFO cults in the world, one of the movements the Raelian movement is quite fond of is transhumanism. They constantly reference their work in Raelian tracts. One of the futures that the Raelians see emerging as a result of transhumanism is a future where you have this antagonistic binary of the mortals and the immortals, because they believe that transhumanism will result in the emergence of an immortal variety of humanity, and that the rest of the vulgar masses, the people who refuse to abandon their traditional religious faiths, well, they will be relegated to the cosmic dustbin as the mortals. But that's basically what we see with transhumanism, hence the title of the article, Automated Autotheism. We see an attempt to basically make of man a god, to make man to transform man into a deific being.
And like you said earlier, that it ties in the UFO deception seems to have played something of a midwife role there. I mean, because I learned just recently, and I didn't, know this until, more recent, that Whitley Strieber, he's written several different books, but the most popular are the Communion series, which is about his, alleged encounters with aliens and his, torments at the hands of these extraterrestrials. But he had a book called Masters of the Keys, where a being appears to him, and he isn't too specific as to whether or not this is alien or not, but it's just another one of those strange visitations that Strieber seems to be susceptible to. And this visitor tells him, he says, in order for humans to survive, you have to make quote unquote intelligent machines. You have to make machines that actually become more intelligent than yourself. And eventually through and this is all paraphrased, but this is accurate. And eventually, through the accumulation of all this knowledge, they actually become sentient like you. And so you can see where the where UFO deception is kind of acting as a midwife kind of for transhumanism and all.
Yeah, that emergence of AI as being a necessary prerequisite for the transfiguration of humanity. That's at the core of the belief in the singularity that you see advanced by Ray Kurzweil. This period of time when allegedly artificial intelligence will amass so much information that it will somehow sorcerously become sentient, that it will become self-aware, which is nonsense. It's garbage. One of the reasons being is that information, apart from information not really possessing a positive ontological status, no matter how much information you amass, it doesn't necessarily mean that what's going to arise out of that information is consciousness. Apart from that, the fact is that consciousness is the ontological foundation of computation, not the other way around. Computation only arises out of consciousness. Consciousness does not arise out of computation. So to assume that just because a computer has amassed enormous volumes of information, that it's somehow going to now become a person, this is worse than superstition.
You're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah. Again,
literally.
Yeah, consciousness
Right.
consciousness is the ontological foundation of computation. And even when we say the words AI or artificial intelligence, what we're talking about is not really intelligence per se. When it comes to intelligence, we're talking about, the intentionality and that being about something. That is consciousness. And computers are about nothing. They don't exhibit that sort of intentionality. So it's all chimera. It's worse than superstition. At least with superstition, you'll have the black cat. Here with transhumanism, you have just information. And for some reason, they esteem information as possessing some sort of positive ontological status, that it will somehow make something real, that you can make something real of it, which is nonsense. If that was the case, then why don't you have, entire volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica suddenly lifting themselves off bookshelves and speaking?
Right.
It's all nonsense. But the reason that this belief system has managed to flourish within the largely secular milieu of the West, because if you look at transhumanism, it's merely an updated form of Gnosticism. You have a pronounced allergy towards matter, which was symptomatic of Gnosticism. The assignment of a positive ontological status to evil. In this case, the transhumanists concretize evil in the form of the flesh, of biological operating systems, of physical bodies, which they regard as outmoded, as ontologically deficient. You have the belief that all the world is really amounts to simulacrum, and that information is somehow realer than the external world. That's all derivative of Gnosticism. You have much of the cosmological pessimism there of Gnosticism. But the reason that this neo-Gnostic faith has been able to flourish here in the West, in the secular milieu of the West, is because secularism is, this was observed by Eric Voegelin in his work, The New Science of Politics. Secularism is, as he puts it, a radical emanatism. It's a system where you basically create a closed immanent frame. There is no transcendent order. There is no transcendent God. But within that closed demonic frame, mankind can be apotheosized, that transfigured into the divine. And why is that? Well, what is closely aligned with secularism? Well, atheism. Atheism is, pretty closely aligned with secularism. Secular humanists are by and large atheists, but atheism is basically the affirmation of the non-existence of God. It's the affirmation of a negative. It's the affirmation of the non-existence of God, which is a logical contradiction. Because how can you affirm a negative in the absolute? That is anybody who even the most sophomoric of philosophical thinkers recognize the logical contradiction of that. That's like saying that there is no such thing as a black stone with white dots anywhere in all of the universe. So you're basically laying claim to a deific trait in order to deny deity. You're laying claim to omniscience in order to deny the existence of an omniscient being. And so you're saying I have infinite knowledge in order to say there is no one with infinite knowledge.
Well, so whether you know it or not, denial becomes actually displacement.
Right. And so this is why in his famous debate with Father Copleston, Bertrand Russell backed away from his hard atheist stand and assumed more of an agnostic stand. He more so enunciated an epistemic incertitude concerning the existence of God instead of a dogmatic denial thereof. Because he realized that by asserting with epistemological certainty that there was no God, he would have to lay claim to omniscience. But therein is the problem, is atheism, and this is why the question always arises: what's in the name? What's in the name atheism? Theos, without God. Well, to be without God is eventually, and Ludwig Feuerbach, who of course was he was the antecedent of Karl Marx, one of his chief influences. But Feuerbach
Marxist theoreticians refer to Feuerbach all the time. Like if you know Marx,
absolutely,
you know Feuerbach.
Yeah. Well, Feuerbach points out that in his work that at bottom atheism is really autotheism. What is autotheism? Autotheism, breaking it down etymologically, is auto, one or self, theos, God. The one, the self, is God. So, or egotheism is another way that you could refer to it. It's the enshrinement of the human ego as God, the enthronement of man as God. And what we're talking about here is this is a gross parody of Orthodox Christian eschatological hopes. At least in Orthodoxy, Orthodox Christianity, you have the eschatological hope of theosis, which is deification by God's uncreated energies or grace. That's what really I mean when I say energies. I'm not invoking it in any sort of New Age sense there. As a matter of fact, that's from whence the word grace comes, is from energia. It's just the providential work of God in the world. Man becomes more and more like God, but never, he always remains ontologically distinct from God. He remains fundamentally human. Man doesn't become, in theosis, doesn't become a pantheon of gods like you have in Mormonism. It's just you're becoming more and more holy, righteous, and perfect as the theanthropos, or the God-man, Christ, is holy, righteous, and perfect. You see this in the epistles of Peter, partaking of as St. Peter put it, partaking of the divine nature. That's basically theosis. that God remains fundamentally God, man remains fundamentally man, but man is transfigured, man is glorified, and God makes him holy. In contradistinction to theosis, you have apotheosis, which is deification by essence. Man is transformed on the essential level and no longer is fundamentally human. He becomes something else. In a Nietzschean sense, humanity is slain. And you see this sort of Nietzschean talk in transhumanism. There's this constant talk about the extinction of humanity. For instance, you take British roboticist Kevin Warwick. He basically says, well, I was born a human, but that's an accident. That was purely accidental. That's just a condition of time and space. Human nature is nothing more than an accident. It's only the product of an inadvertent interaction between time, chance, and matter. And which is it's interesting that he should express such sentiments, because such sentiments are dysteleological. He's countenancing the view that the universe is blind, purposeless, meaningless, but nevertheless, transhumanism is striving towards a telos, or a purposive end, and so it moves from dysteleology, the belief in a blind, purposeless universe, to teleology, which is a belief in a universe with purposiveness, with a specific end, a raison d'entrée in mind. And their telos is basically the deification of man, the apotheosis of humanity through automation, through nanotechnology, biotechnology, genetic engineering. Those are the means by which it's accomplished.
And I'd like to just add here, when you look at this agenda, this goal of changing man on the essential level, you actually find individuals and groups and movements that were attempting this long before the first transhumanists coined the term transhumanism. If you go back to the alchemists, they were trying to do this exact same thing with employing occult methodologies. So as much as the transhumanists, and as much as the scientific cults and whatnot would have you believe that they have no linkage with the occult or with alchemists, they land in the same place. Both share the same goals, and so the question is are these transhumanists really just hyper rational scientists, or are they just alchemists of our day, the new alchemists who are using new methodology and all to accomplish the same goals that their alchemical counterparts were attempting to do going back into antiquity? It's discomforting for them to have to consider this. It gives them a heartburn, but it's there. It's the dark truth about the transhumanists. We might be dealing with little more than a new wave of occultism that veils itself using scientific jargons and scientific language.
Right. So the predicate to this age of occultism, or whatever, Bainbridge, who has a very interesting background in himself, the predicate is the secularization. So then you have the secular gospel, then you have occultism, then you have the transhumanists and the magicians. So you have this literal rise of this Crowley-like magician where I can put my finger. He's not much different than an alchemist, which is why alchemy and magic are intertwined, maybe even a double helix.
Yeah, absolutely. I know with Bainbridge, we're opening a whole can of worms there. And I don't know that Phil necessarily agrees with this, but this is kind of, the more I read about the man, the more I I kind of entertain this assertion that he's doing all this. He's living among the processed church of the final judgment, and he's supposedly just doing nothing more than research, ethnographic studies, and all. Well, I'm of the opinion now that all he was doing, when you distill it down, is just taking process and theology and giving it a scientific garb. So is he really much more than a Scientologist apostate or a procession who has found a way of taking what de Grimston and McLean were hawking off at people and selling it with in a kind of pseudo scientific garb?
Yeah.
Is transhumanism, in other words, it's transhumanism nothing more than process theology in a different packaging?
Yeah. William Sims Bainbridge conducted an ethnographic study of the process church, and he wrote the essay. I hope I'm not butchering the title. He wrote the essay "Satan's Process," wherein he speaks glowingly of satanic cults, and in particular the process church. He believes that with these cults, that working with these cults, social scientists can fashion a new religion for the future. And he says that the new role for sociologists is that of religious engineers, the skilled crafting creation of a new religion. But William Sims Bainbridge is also extremely sympathetic towards transhumanism, and actually countenances some of its eschatological hopes. He seems to believe, as they do, that somehow through automation, through nanotechnology and biotechnology and genetic engineering, that we will alter ourselves on the essential level and basically become deific beings.
But also, Bainbridge felt that collaboration and cooperation with these cults was instrumental in creating religious engineering methods. So it would be unthinkable to break that tie between the circles that William Sims Bainbridge represented and the cults. So this might explain why the whole narrative of the moral panic of satanic, or the whole moral panic, satanic panic narrative, why that whole narrative got started, and all because if it was shown that these cults were this collaboration with these cults was producing something, the relationship between these cults and the intelligence community and the research community, if it was shown to be birthing something that was nefarious, people would call for a divorce from these cults, and so they had to present these cults as actually being benign and persecuted and unjustly persecuted.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Bainbridge was in on it. He wrote a book called Dynamic Secularization. He's part of it, and the whole satanic panic is all promoted by the people involved in these cults and these.
Absolutely.
For people who don't know, the process thought they were going to take over the world.
Yes.
They thought they were so influential. That's how powerful and secretive they were at one point. They were involved in all kinds of things.
Oh God, everywhere, right down to fraudulent animal shelters.
They weren't the only cultists that were the only occultists that were involved in creating this construct, which again I believe that or this narrative, creating this narrative, which again I believe that the satanic panic narrative or this notion that it's all just moral panic and all. I believe that that was created so as to preserve the symbiotic relationship between Bainbridge's research community, the intelligence community, and these cults. Again, the Protestants were not the only ones contributing to the satanic panic narrative. They weren't the only occultists. For instance, most of the audience has probably heard of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation.
Yes,
okay?
FMSM, is that type false memory
Yes.
syndrome? Yeah.
Yes.
MM.
What most people don't know is that there was a predecessor to that group called the Committee for Scientific Examination of Religion. And they came out with a book called Satanism in America, How the Devil Got More Than His Due, which basically, started, it was the embryonic phases of the satanic panic narrative, this book and all. But one of the contributors to that book was a guy named Sean Carlson, who the media just presented to us as a scientist. He's just a physicist. He's a physicist. He's a rational physicist presenting us with a rational argument, against quote unquote satanic. Well, it ends up that Sean Carlson actually ran a press, an occult press known as Gaia Press, out of none other than El Cerrito, California, which we will go into, which the readers will see this in the second part of Automated Autotheism, which will be in the next issue of Decoding Culture Foundation's journal. El Cerrito is actually a kind of a enclave of spiritualists. It actually had a going back to, I think, 1921, they actually had a case there where where there was this mass mediumistic psychosis that broke out from the use of a Ouija board, and the Ouija board was actually banned in El Cerrito for a time. So, and this is the guy that's telling us, don't worry, Sean Carlson, working out of El Cerrito with this Gaia Press, is the guy that's telling us, don't, in regards to occult crime, in regards to satanic crime, telling us, don't worry, nothing to see here. So
yeah, but tying this back into transhumanism, the individual. Now, of course, the term transhumanism was, if I'm not mistaken, was first coined by Aldous Huxley, I believe. But it was the neologism. It was presented in its modern sense by a gentleman by the name of Max More, who also, in addition to being a transhumanist, authored an essay entitled "In Praise of the Devil," and in that essay, More offered a portrayal of the devil through the prism of an inverted hermeneutic, like the inverted hermeneutic that you see in some Gnostic texts, where, like for instance, the hypostasis of the archons, the ancient Gnostic text, in that the serpent, which of course Christians would associate with the devil, is depicted as an incognito savior, as a liberator of humanity. And likewise, in his essay In Praise of the Devil, Max More depicts Satan in much the same fashion. And Max, he goes on excoriating Christianity for being, a superstitious, oppressive belief system that shackles people with the confining parameters of objective moral values as they are promoted in the Ten Commandments, as they were given to man on Mount Sinai, as they were exposited by Christ, and meanwhile Satan, in his view, becomes the liberator. Now, there's a distinction to be made here. First of all, Max More does not consider himself a Satanist. He refers to himself as a Luciferian. But again, this comes back to the question: what's in a name?
Right.
None of these distinctions are meaningful. I've noticed that many modern Satanist apologists try to make some sort of meaningful distinction between theistic and atheistic Satanism. Well, we don't believe in God. They believe in, they don't regard Satan as a literal metaphysical entity. He's not regarded as an existentially tenable being.
Right.
He's merely a symbol. He's merely a symbol. Even if that's the case, and it is, okay, and it is for the Luciferian as well, even if it is, the eschatological hope remains the same. The eschatological hope is apotheosis.
So you start to wonder if this is just rebranding that periodically takes place when a stigma starts to get attached to a certain name or a certain term,
Right.
and we see rebranding ad nauseum in with these different cults. First they're the process, then they're the foundation, then they're the foundation faith in God, then they're the best friends animal shelter, and all. But it's all
On and on. Yeah. Scientology, what was Dianetics to Scientology, and then they shielded themselves by making 1,000 cutouts, almost like the CIA, where it was Scientology, but eventually, if you went through enough doorways or enough, places, it would be Scientology. Oh, by the way, we're Scientology. Right. But it's the same story. If we go back to the Garden of Eden, guys, you shall be as gods. It's the same core story. Self-divinity, apotheosis of the man, and godlike abilities. That's what you're talking about. It's just like Harari saying, this is the past is present. Harari is like one of the great evangelists for these ideas. At the WEF, he was on TV all the time talking his spiel. Not talking about Christianity or even the Old Testament, just talking about this new kind of secular good news, so-called secular good news, which is really just the same old story rebranded in different terms. You can become gods, you can change your body, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where one of the Harari is part of that modern phenomena of what I've heard it be described as the phenomena as the smart stupid person, because ostensibly these people seem to be intellectuals. They when they speak, there's the semblance of intellectual rigor there, but in actuality, what they're saying is quite dumb. It's quite stupid. For instance, Harari fully embraces determinism and rejects free will, but the hysterical part of that, he sounds like a very bad philosopher because he's not taking into consideration how that claim refutes itself. In order to argue on behalf of determinism, we are now assuming that the proponent of determinism is in possession of the free moral agency to argue in favor of determinism. You're basically rejecting as a necessary precondition that which you're attempting, you're opposing. You're saying, I have risen above the confines of this hardwired deterministic system in order to identify it as such and reject free will, but with all in the absence of agency, all in the absence of free will. So the man is contradicting himself, endlessly. But he is a major proponent of this belief system, this autotheistic belief system. It's even in the title of his book, Homo Deus. Deus being God.
Right.
Yeah.
But how much of these guys, like other figures in the kind of scientific community, are really created? They're not somebody was behind them, helping them write books and get them out in the public and being their promoters. I think that there's so many of these guys who are like that, where they're not they're astroturfed. You know, how much is Harari astroturfed? And it is incredible that his evangelization comes out of the holy city, right? He's in Jerusalem, like
Exactly. Oh, very much so. And and it's interesting too, because the transhumanists for quite some time have been peddling their eschatological fanaticism, not only with enclaves like the WEF, but also with the Bilderberg group.
Right. So that's Teal and all those characters. So he's like a guiding member of the Bilderbergs. Even recently,
kind of the covert political circles with a more right of center orientation there and everything. But we're starting to get into the territory where left and right don't even exist anymore. When you talk about how in this realm, nothing of the political camouflage in an actually mud way. I mean, go back to what I was saying about satanic panic. There are actually people pushing off the satanic panic narrative, hawking it off, that came out of the American Enterprise Institute. And that's right. That's right of center guys that were screaming bomb Iran just a few years ago. The neocon kind of.
AEI is all neocon Jews too, right? I think.
Yeah. So we get to this place where both people that are supposedly left wing and right wing are actually promoting the same agenda. Right. You see that with the tech bros. A lot of them are kind of Sunbelt, Southern Rim entrepreneurs. They're kind of like of the Southern Rim variety of the elite. In other words, that grouping of elites that rose shortly after World War II and below the 37th parallel in the southern rim of the country, they are more associated with the right wings of politics, and their critics are usually found with new left writers and stuff. But if you look at what they say, whether it be Peter Thiel or to some extent, unfortunately, Elon Musk as well, or take your pick of any of these other names, and a lot of what they're pushing, a lot of what they're hawking off is really not that all too different than their liberal Eastern establishment counterparts and stuff. And both the liberal establishment has its variety of transhumanism, and Southern Rim in turn also has its own variety of transhumanism. They just have different ways of selling it to the public.
Right. But the reason that transhumanism, its eschatological vision for humanity, the eschaton that it envisions for humanity, this techno rapture of the singularity, and the abolition of all physical biology as an outmoded means by which the species propagates itself. One of the reasons that it has been so appealing to globalist interests, such as the Bilderberg Group, is because it promises, through the medium of technology, that which the globalists have desired all along, and that is the abolition of heterogeneity, of the individual, absolute homogeneity, the complete, in a very monistic sense, the complete oneness of humanity, the amalgamation of all of humanity into a single organism. And this is reminiscent of Gnostic of Gnostic eschatological aspirations, because the Gnostics, what was it that the Gnostics derided about the physical world? Well, it was the physical world is defined by differentiation. The physical world is a world of differentiated beings that qualitatively are distinct from one another. And the Gnostics viewed that as a symptom of the corruption, the alleged corruption of materiality, the alleged corruption of the physical universe. Because in their view, that reality should have been an undifferentiated spiritual reality, and the descent into materiality resulted in variety. It resulted in differentiation, and so an order of differentiated beings was a corrupt order. Likewise, when you ideologize that belief and that codify that belief as a political system, in this case globalism, what do they view as a corruption? They view as a corruption the multiplicity of cultures, the multiplicity of different nation states, different systems of governance, different economies. That's why they strive towards an interdependent system, because they want to homogenize humanity. They want to transform all the world into an undifferentiated collective. And this on the political level is the political religion. And it quite literally is a political religion, because it reflects the eschatological hopes of Gnosticism, of collectivism. And transhumanism promised to deliver on that by bringing all these differentiated beings into a monoculture and a mono world, a monolithic system of governance through technology, through biotechnology, through nanotechnology, through genetic engineering. All of these distinctions could be abolished, and we could become a single machine race. Which you see this machine motif, throughout history. You see, for instance, in Prussia, with the Prussian militaristic Prussian state, from which we have many of the ideological roots of Cecil Rhodes and Milner.
Yeah, that's where we get the Anglo-Prussianism.
Yeah, Anglo-Prussianism.
Right,
With that, you had this constant machine analogy, constant machine analogies. The machine invention. It was also part of the parlance of the Bavarian Illuminati. Constant allusions to man as a machine. It was symptomatic of 18th century Enlightenment, which of course is the crucible for all socio-political utopianism. But that's what
that's Marxism too. That's communism.
That's absolutely right.
Part of it.
Absolutely right. Yeah. But where Marx failed to deliver, and other socio-political utopians failed to deliver, the transhumanists believe they can now make it happen. Well, through the microchip, through biotechnology, nanotechnology, through genetic engineering.
That's the punchline, though. That's the punchline is the transhumanist. The more you study this, at first it gets kind of scary. You're like, you're because as they describe their perfect world, you're like, my God, that's not a perfect world. That's dystopia. That's a world where being a human becomes increasingly. The human being increasingly falls more within the liability, into the liability bracket and stuff. But then you realize as you read this and as you study it and research it more, that they've said a lot of things and that have never come to pass, that their mouths are writing checks that they cannot and have not cashed. And what is going to happen to Harari when Homo Deus never emerges?
Yeah,
he's going to be marginalized. He'll even be marginalized by his elite benefactors that are propping this total charlatan up. It's kind of like it's kind of like the guy that gets financing and promises that he's got a revolutionary new automobile that's going to revolutionize the markets, and he's got all this money coming in, and then the financiers one day say, "What are you doing with our money? We want to see." And they stop by the guy's house, and they find a chassis up on blocks, and that's it. And it's like, I paid for this crap, and the guy has and they want to take the guy to task, but the guy has left town with all their cash.
Yeah, they can't deliver, because the problem is that their entire belief system is premised in part on computational functionalism, which of course analogizes the human brain to informational processing software. So desires, pains, thoughts, beliefs, all of these mental states are suddenly reduced to computational states in the brain.
Yeah.
But the problem is that this analogy, like so many other analogies that you always see invoked by theoreticians, it's conjured up as this explanatory model in order to make sense of a very complex object of study, and that is consciousness, which is irreducibly complex. So
Right.
these explanatory models, what people don't seem to understand about them, they tend to proffer unlimited explanatory power, but in actuality, they're never entirely accurate, nor are they fully descriptive. They're composed of a lot of warm fuzzy rhetoric, like pedagogical metaphors, figures of speech, illustrative analogies. But the transhumanists have actually ontologized that explanatory model, and now they believe they've taken literal figures of speech. We typically, in order to try to describe consciousness, we tend to liken it to a computer or to a calculator, but that's just a heuristic device, a socially constructed heuristic device that we're using to try to explain something, and it's not meant to be taken literally. They have taken it quite literal, and they have literally projected that. They've turned it into this illusion, like Geppetto with Pinocchio. Geppetto believes that this puppet is a boy, which through the magic of animation he might become a boy, but we all know that in reality that simply doesn't happen. Likewise, they have projected onto the computer anthropomorphic qualities. They have tried to make of a computer that which is distinctly human, and the irony of that is that many of their theoretical antecedents, like Feuerbach, actually accused Christianity of doing much the same thing. God was an anthropomorphic projection in their view. God was the projection of all of man's finest features into a hypostatic beyond. That's how we came up with God. God was nothing more than a projection of man. Well, now the computer has become a projection of man. They're guilty of the very anthropomorphic projectionism that they accuse Christians of.
So the transhumanists, through their projectionism, have really become the grifters of the hour. And the grifters are enjoying a symbiotic relationship with the elite class right now, because right now it helps along the elite agenda. And so, they both seem to be benefiting. But what happens when the day comes and the transhumanists are supposed to put up or shut up and present to us what Whitley Strieber was saying, that his visitor was talking about, quote unquote, intelligent machines, a machine that has grown so intelligent that it's actually become sentient. When they fail to do that, what is going to happen? What is going to happen to these transhumanists? A lot of them are.
What's even scarier is if they say they've created sentience and impose it on everybody else. That's probably even scarier.
It's funny
that they may not even actually believe that.
It's funny that you say that, William, because that has been actually speculated that a quote unquote false flag of sorts is on the way, where they're just like, trust us. This is this. The Pinocchio is a boy. Trust us. Just trust
They're
us.
already doing that.
Yeah.
They're already saying that a man can be a woman can be a man. It's part of the transhumanism.
Yeah,
But they're imposing it with costs, right?
Yeah,
So you can't say you'll always be a woman or you will lose your job. They'll try to kill you. Like some of these trans. Well, I mean, you can't say certain words because they'll come get you. Which got in trouble.
You
But
don't want to get racial.
transsexuals will attack you. They are conditioned to attack you for disputing them. So what else is this enforcement of this transhumanist agenda is already taking place? There's absolutely no doubt. And before we wrap it up, I've watched Alien Earth came out 3 days ago, and it just after reading your article and your talk, the themes in there are coming at me because it's a transhuman. They've taken the consciousness and put it into they put it into this super being, and the super being, once the aliens come to Earth, who's going to save us? This Ubermensch.
Absolutely.
The new super being is going to be the one to fall off from the alien invasion. It's off the charts.
Absolutely.
And also, there's a character in this who's the first trillionaire, clearly a tech bro, who's reached a kind of his own apotheosis or apotheosis.
Yeah.
And that is that he can't find anybody to talk to because he's so knowledgeable.
Yes.
And so he's almost like in the place of God, creating this new man with new consciousness. It's off the charts. And that's the selling you just mentioned, selling to the public. That's part of this. And these agendas, I mean, so many of these shows are clearly propaganda. And this, I think, is one of them, this Alien Earth.
That's absolutely right. I mean, you have
guys, we're at the 56-minute mark. Why don't you wrap it up? Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed?
If folks want to check out the article, it's in Cultural Engineering Studies.
Okay, so Philip and Paul Collins brothers, we have lost communication, I think. But I will put a link to this, Automated Autotheism, and you can still Philip D. Collins. You can see it here. That's the Decoding Culture Foundation. And that's it. I don't know what happened to their connection, but at least we made it to 57 minutes. So anyway, thanks for listening and have a great weekend. It's Friday. Thanks.